Surrey, BC obviously requires proactive planning to meet its growing demands.
GG, $1,600 for a basement apartment.
Only large city in Canada that cannot treat the three leading causes of death.
They cannot even decide who runs the police force.
The region we now call Surrey has been home for the Samiamu, Katzie, and Kwantlen First Nations peoples for thousands of years. It began with a few well-established villages, along with several seasoned settlements along the mouth of the Fraser River, at Crescent Beach, at the mouth of the Campbell River, and in the north along the Fraser River. During the 1800s, newcomers from around the world began to settle here. Immigration since then has fueled Surrey's growth, making it one of North America's fastest growing cities. Many resident families, including my very own, share a journey of great migration with their final stop here in Surrey, British Columbia.
Well, my father was one of the early people who came here over 100 years ago.
I came here about 1994 as an immigrant.
I moved to Surrey in 1978 along with my wife and my son.
At the end of high school, I moved with my family.
I wasn't born in British Columbia. I chose to move here.
Surrey's home. Surrey's where I was born and raised. Surrey means home to me.
I'm so happy to live in this city.
People in Surrey are really get-her-done kind of people, right? They don't wait for government for handouts. They just keep it going.
Well, Surrey's now the second largest city in the province. It'll be, within 5 years, the largest city in the province. What that means is that the growth for Surrey is unlimited.
And Surrey needs having so many diverse people living together, enjoying life, and making our future even a better place for our children.
It means a place where you can build a decent life, even if you weren't born here. That it's a place of opportunity.
This is the Surrey is the community which is the representation and makeup of Canada.
When I first started dealing in Surrey, it was back in the 1970s. I was a prosecutor at the time, so I worked the courts in Surrey, and I worked with the RCMP in Surrey. So the whole position of Surrey has changed tremendously since that time, because it's now the home of a lot of investment. A lot of people are moving here.
I ran for the MLA position in Surrey Newton, and I have been very, very fortunate to get the support from Surrey Newton constituents in 2005 election, 2009, 2013, 2017, and then last one, 2020.
It's the same community that has given me a privilege to sit in the House of Commons 5 times.
Well, you can see where the future of our province is. And it's something the Fraser, the growth that's happening here, the massive population growth. There are other centers of our province that are growing in similar ways, and that's very exciting. But for me, when I look at Surrey and the Fraser Valley, you can see where population is going and where culture is going and where business is going. And it's a very exciting time for Surrey.
It isn't Surrey choosing people. People have been choosing Surrey. Immigration has forced the community's growth, making it the city it is today.
The thing that's impressive about Surrey is a number of immigrants who have come here and have been a part of the fabric, have contributed so much to Surrey.
We always need more people. I hear all the time businesses are saying they can't find workers. So we need, more people here.
That's our obligation as Canadians, to ensure that while we need people and while we beckon people to come here under our immigration laws, that when they come here, that they're treated fairly and that they have housing, education, and health.
And by 2030, there will be 5 million seniors that will be retiring. So we need to fill in that gap. There will always be a deficit. Where we'll need workers. Whether we want to build houses, whether we want to build hospitals, infrastructure, schools, all that we need workers to provide those services. To do that, we need an immigration.
But you can't have immigrants and skilled people unless we have adequate housing. So housing poses another problem. Is there enough land? And those things they have to be done together. We can't work in silos. We have to work together to ensure that all arms of government work together.
More people means more challenges. Pressure on hospitals, on schools, and on roads. Therefore, rush hour is now seemingly endless, and the daily gridlock is taking its toll.
It's a serious issue. I think if you go back to 2015-16, the Mayor's Council decided the business case is to expand the public transportation along King George all the way to Newton. And but then government of the day decided not to proceed with it. Instead, they said that they want to do a referendum. A referendum, they asked two questions. Do you agree with expanding public transportation? If the answer is yes, will you pay for additional taxes? Of course, the public said no. And that put the whole system behind. And we are seeing the congestion as a result of neglect of duty at that time.
Public transit, ridership. Post-pandemic, we're talking post-COVID, ridership went down on all public transit right across the country, in fact, North America. For Surrey, we are probably the quickest bounce back of anywhere in North America. We are at 120%. So when you see buses in Surrey go back and they say, sorry, we're full, that's because we need more rapid transit. There is any more public transit. There is no way you can build roads. You cannot build your way out of that kind of congestion. It has to be public transit. And we have to do that. I push pretty hard for Surrey to be the first bus rapid transit in Metro Vancouver region, in the TransLink region. And we are in the top 3. So that's, and I'm hopeful we're going to be the first one out the gate because we're so ready for it.
And I think that is the future. And where people could go to work in this region, come home using public transportation. Our seniors can go and visit each other and do their shopping and do their other businesses.
At the same time, at the City of Surrey, their engineering department has to figure out new ways to direct the traffic, the lights, putting new infrastructure in to make sure that we are able to deal with it.
All these people on the roads need somewhere to rest their heads. A growing population and years of inadequate planning has led to a lack of housing.
When people moved to BC, last 2 years, we had record number of people moving to British Columbia, and many of them came and made Surrey their home.
There's no question that housing is a huge problem, and we have to ensure that the people who live here and the people who are coming here have adequate housing.
The demand is there because because we are the fastest growing municipality, so the demand for the housing is growing, but the supply is not there. So we got to bring in steps to fix the supply. So we have a supply that will meet the demand.
Well, I think housing is one of the key necessities of life. And it's not a luxury, it is a necessity.
It's something that every person is entitled to in a free and democratic society like Canada. And we don't have enough housing. We've grown too quickly to provide housing for all our citizens.
Well, we just came out of a legislative session that was very focused on housing. There were 5 different bills that became law in this session. And they're everything from how do we get housing that's currently underused onto the market for people who are looking for a place to rent or buy. And so that's specifically about short-term rentals, Airbnb and VRBO. They're great places to vacation in. My family vacations in them. It's great. But what we saw was people buying up multiple homes and condos and running large private hotels through these short-term rental places, competing with families that were looking for a place to live. We don't have the housing stock for that.
For decades, there was very, very underfunding in housing by governments, both federal level and the provincial level. And so there's a lot of catching up to do. And our province is doing it.
So we passed a law that allows people to build more than one unit on a single family lot. So people have a chance to move into a townhome or a triplex. That requires cities to allow taller buildings around SkyTrain stations and rapid bus so that people who actually use transit can afford to live close to transit. And a number of other measures around development financing to make sure that infrastructure is there.
We have seen a number of legislation that were brought and passed in Victoria to speed up a building of homes, help local communities to go over they'll get over the hurdle that they face as it processes to permitting, building more homes. So
we are doing everything we can, whether it's building on publicly owned land, whether it's directly funding it for social housing, whether it's allowing people to legalizing the construction of housing in our province and speeding it up and opening up short-term rentals to long-term rentals and for sale. We're doing everything we can.
So I think we're doing it, and obviously a lot more need to be done.
The cost of everything is rising. What we pay at the pumps, what we pay for groceries, and what we pay to put a roof over our heads. This rising unaffordability leading to more residents in our community than ever being forced onto the streets.
It's a very sad situation.
It's a problem involving poverty and all other kinds of social issues. So it's a huge issue, and no one level of government can solve it by itself.
I have traveled from coast to coast to coast, not only in Surrey. In fact, I see it in every municipality, every community now. The homelessness is growing, and a major problem is also the mental health issues. Right? As Surrey federal government, whether we have invested $4 billion into the housing strategy, whether we are giving $4 billion to municipalities to make sure that we are able to escalate the process for the development permits, building permits, to have enough housing supply.
And homelessness is a serious issue. It's been there for years, if not decades, and it's not acceptable in Canada and British Columbia in 2023. We are one of the richest countries, and we have resources. We still have homeless people.
Again, it comes down to understanding the problem, understanding where people are, knowing their story. It's very easy to label people, but we're moving away from labels. We are going to be partners in solution-oriented initiatives, and that is where we're heading.
We have our mobile street enforcement team, our community response teams. These are just more so those boots on the ground officers who are, doing foot patrols in some of these more higher risk areas. And might be talking to more so our unhoused clients.
There's still big challenges in Wally, but we were able to move a huge number of people from a street encampment into housing. And we've been doing that work across the province, getting people inside and responding to their needs through housing. It's challenging work given the numbers involved. But we've been doing that work. We built more than 10,000 units of housing, and we actually do more to respond to the people outside, as well as going upstream to protect people in the housing that are in housing that may end up homeless if we don't take action by protecting them from illegal evictions and other pieces like that.
With our governments, however we can do that outreach, work with our partners at homeless shelters. I know whenever there are cold snaps, for example, we receive alerts and we take those extra steps to talk to our unhoused clients and make sure, can we take them to a shelter for the night? Can we get them off the street? Again, it all comes down to that public safety piece.
We got to make sure that we have proper resources and proper information so we can go into those communities to bring in awareness and deal with the mental health, which eventually will help bringing the homelessness down as well.
So all of our civic facilities, whether it's the library here or our community centers, they are open for daytime warming, and similarly in the summer for cooling. And then we're trying to find those locations for shelter for what they call EWR, emergency weather response.
Again, it's not solely a police problem or a health problem or a justice problem. It's a community issue. And that's the only way that we're all going to work together and solve it.
There's a lot of work being done there, but certainly we're not there yet.
Homelessness and the province's toxic drug crisis go hand in hand. 7 British Columbians are dying every day. Surrey and Vancouver, the epicenter for the crisis.
There's not a week that I don't hear, there's an overdose issue, right?
It is a serious issue, very complex. There's no quick solutions to it. There are ordinary family members dying at home. And so it's not just, sometimes people think it's a homeless people with addictions are dying, but it's people who go to work every day, their families, they are dying with overdose. It's, the mixture of very poisonous drugs by those who are making money off of people is causing a lot of deaths.
It's a health issue. And I think we're moving towards the right way into decriminalize the drugs that are being used. But you can't decriminalize them unless you have a treatment plan. And so we need a treatment plan. People who are taking drugs are not necessarily criminals. They're doing it because there's a basic health need here.
It's a huge worry for me. I got a couple of kids that are younger. But I know, when they go to high school and they're talking with other people and maybe they're at a party and someone says, here, this is fine, you can take it, whatever. And that they could just die at a party if that happened, or at a concert. Some of the stories I've talked to parents who have lost kids because the toxic drug crisis is so scary. And so there's a number of pieces of what we're doing around this.
We are in consultation with a lot of nonprofit organizations, community groups, that how do we collaboratively tackle this problem? Drug usage is there, and a lot of people are losing lives because of this as well. So how do we raise awareness? How do we support these people rather than stigmatizing them for the drug use? How do we build them up? It's all about working together and supporting each other.
We do have projects where we work directly with Fraser Health Authority. And some people will know we have a new unit that was built called Foxglove. We opened it a while ago. Foxglove is right across from the Jim Pattison outpatient clinic.
We've got our mental health outreach team. They're out there, boots on the ground. They know who our clients are in our community, our most vulnerable, marginalized folks who would be susceptible.
And 13,000 lives in our province. And it's something we think about all the time, about how we can do better, how we can do more. And you can see people struggling in the streets in our province right now.
Certainly, we're not there yet.
Police resources have been dedicated to various things, from preventing overdoses to dealing with the rise in vandalism and theft. Residents have become weary regarding their own safety over the past several years.
There's one issue that has always been impacting Surrey residents is a public safety. Public safety has always been a top concern for people of Surrey whenever I went for door knocking.
If you don't feel safe at home, walking their children in your neighborhood park, or using public facilities, if you don't feel safe around those areas, nothing else matters.
Well, first and foremost, our priority is public safety, right? Keeping the community safe, keeping our officers safe, making this a safe and happy place for everyone to live.
Crime always goes up and down. What I've seen as a problem is people stop reporting crime. And that happens for a number of reasons. Either people don't trust the police sometimes, or they feel that they don't want to be part of, some sort of solution or a problem even, that it's happening in someone else's backyard. So we don't need to report, we don't need to intervene. And that has to change. When we talk about stats could be misleading sometimes. Stats may say the crime's going down, but what if the people stop reporting crime, or certain areas reporting crime more than others? So we got to look at in a very holistic way and how people are feeling.
Reporting on our stats on a regular basis that violent crime is actually down, even though that might not be the perception out there. And that's something that we're always trying to relay to the public, is that quite often, yes, you might hear more in the news about, the shootings or the stabbings and that sort of thing. But the truth actually is, when it comes down to what our statistics are, violent crime is actually down.
But we also look at, is there fear and paranoia in the community? how are people feeling? Are you okay with sending your kid to the park at 8 p.m.? If not, why not? So we're looking to unpack those feelings.
And then we have other specialized units who, again, for example, one of our communities just yesterday, we had chai with a cop, where they held that. And again, and the whole point behind those are to get members of the community to come out and to talk to us and to open up that dialogue.
If you look at Surrey, you've got to divide it into many different districts. And each district has its unique set of problems and successes as well. So if you look at Newton, they'll have different kind of problems. So we're going to look at how can we cater to those problems and provide solutions based on what exactly is happening in these areas rather than providing one solution for the entire city.
Every weekend, every almost evening through the week, we have officers going to dinners and galas and parades and ceremonies and celebrations. And it's wonderful to see. So the inroads, again, that we are making with our communities, I think is next level here in Surrey.
We can't separate the police from the community. Community is the police and police is the community. And without the support from the residents, from the community, it's really hard to curb certain things or criminal elements, for example. We need to work together. We need to work in collaboration.
Everybody needs to be at the table in order to help keep our community safe. And we're just one piece of that puzzle.
All of this pressure on police while stuck in the middle of a political feud of the force of record. Both the Surrey RCMP and the Surrey Police Force facing ongoing uncertainty, and those in Surrey just wanting a conclusion to the saga.
In 2018, not the previous council, the one before that. So when Linda Hepner was mayor, there was a motion made that the city would look at, and it laid out all of those pieces it needed. So it talked about cost-benefit analysis, a public consultation process, referendum. They talked about impact studies on how we would do this. Do we want to do this? The new council came in, was led by the previous mayor, and he said, we're not doing any of that. So when we voted to say, yeah, let's look at all the stuff that happened in previous council, he said, no, we're not looking. We're not doing any of the groundwork. We're just going to do it, because he was very, very stubborn about moving it forward. Fact of the matter is, without doing the foundation documents, without making sure you've done a cost-benefit analysis, a feasibility study, you've done your impact studies, you've done human resources studies. Without doing that, you're doing it on a bed of sand, and that's where we are today, and that's why we're where we are today.
So at the time, the Premier and the Solicitor General appointed me to do the transition. The first thing Surrey had to do was they had to prove to the provincial government that they needed their own police force. And the argument that Surrey used was that they were too big to have the RCMP. They needed their own police force. Keep in mind that it's a Surrey City Council. Mayor Locke was city councillor at that time, and they voted in favor unanimously of moving away from the RCMP.
I'm certain that we bypass the population of Vancouver. Look at Vancouver, Delta, Epworth. Those municipalities have their own policing, and it's about time for us to have our own local police.
I agreed with them because Surrey was the largest community in the country that didn't have its own police force.
That they're moving from one police force to the other. So there's going to be some issues of transition that would have to be cared for. What happens to ongoing investigations? Who does those investigations? So the two police forces would be working together until the RCMP were in a position to move away, and the Surrey Police Force would take over the whole of the policing for the city.
So here we are today. The cost is extraordinary because we pay a contract to the RCMP. If it's city police, we pay for everything. We have to redo all of our IT. That's at least $90 million with the $90 million. We have to have 2-man cars. That's a collective agreement. We don't with the RCMP. We have all of the infrastructure we have to purchase. We guess, we don't know because they haven't given us a budget. That's going to be about $250 million for that infrastructure. Numbers. If you look at Vancouver, it's about $520 per person for public safety. In Surrey, it's about $300. So you've got about a 70% increase just in that. We can't afford it. We just simply cannot afford it.
I disagree with her with the greatest of respect that it was on a bed of sand. The fact is that Surrey needs their own police force. They need a police force that's governed locally. And so that's the advantage of having your own police force. I think the RCMP have done an excellent job. So I agree with the mayor there that the Mounties, the RCMP, have done a good job. But the whole reason for moving away from the police force was to have local management. And I would like to think that the mayor would work with the Surrey Police Force to have a local management so that the public safety needs of Surrey would be met.
We know that in Surrey, our crime severity index has declined for over a decade. We've been doing very well. Surrey is a very safe place to live. And I will also tell you that the narrative that says that we answer to Ottawa is completely not true. We don't. All policing, no matter whether it's municipal police or RCMP, is answerable to the provincial government. The contract is between the province and the federal government. We get all of our direction through them. But I would say that the relationship between cities and the RCMP is much better. And I will also tell you that Surrey RCMP are the gold standard. So
more people in Surrey increases the demand for healthcare. Surrey Memorial Hospital is bursting at the seams. Many newcomers and longtime residents alike cannot find a family doctor, making people question if care will be there when they really need it.
I think healthcare is a very big issue right now because of our growing population, and we just don't have the resources to take care of everybody.
The community is growing. The needs in the healthcare is growing. When it comes to primary care, sure, we need more family physicians, we need more nurses, and we need another hospital.
So coming from the emergency department, we see all walks of life coming through, and with every single possible problem. And so we just don't have the resources here at Surrey to take care of those patients. And
I think some people argue that somehow the healthcare system should be based on the community boundaries. But it's a regional issue.
Well, Surrey is the only large city in Canada that cannot treat the 3 leading causes of death, which is stroke, heart attack, and trauma. And all of those patients need to go north of the Fraser. So it's soul crushing when we have these patients that are dying in front of us, and then we have to find a place that will then ultimately take care of them, which is if Royal Columbian is on diversion, then we would have to send them to St. Paul's or VGH. And so that is one of the biggest crises I see, is that there's poor access to life-saving intervention.
The big challenge that we didn't build the healthcare infrastructure we needed, the clinics, whether for cancer or for heart disease or whatever, the hospitals, the clinics where doctors and nurses and other health professionals are all working together. We just didn't build them for years. In Surrey specifically, we had land for a hospital. The previous government sold the land instead of building the hospital that was needed. And so, we need to build those things.
Majority of the time, when it is a critical issue, when they are life-saving interventions, we have to send them north of the Fraser to Royal Columbian or VGH, which is one of the crisis components that we have right now, because we're bursting at the seam.
So the people who are living in Surrey, that they need the urgent care, they should be able to have that locally.
The healthcare is divided by and determined by their address, unfortunately. So if you're a Surrey resident and have a stroke, you will go to Royal Columbian, but the second that the intervention is done, you will come right back to Surrey. So your rehab will not be continued on at Royal Columbian Hospital or north of the Fraser. So So healthcare is divided by your address.
I have been through that hospital on long, not guided tours where everything is made to look beautiful. I've been in the trenches of that hospital, and it is not. It's not a great. It's a great facility, but it's grossly overcrowded.
The old model of the hub and spokes model, which is you have one critical hospital, one high level functioning hospital, and then feeder hospitals. That may have worked in the past, but that is not going to work moving forward. And so one of the biggest issues that I see is that healthcare does become pretty territorial, and people that have that subspecialty in those certain hospitals, they don't want to give up their one shop, and so they don't really like to have new kind of departments coming and challenging their patients. And so that's one of the biggest things that we're seeing. Not only we're seeing it from the ministry level, but within healthcare as well. It's a little bit of a tug of war. We have to start looking at where the population growth is and where the disease burden is. And when we hone in on that and know and identify which population is more subjected to heart attack, stroke, kidney failure, which is Surrey. I mean, majority of the patients that are treated at Royal Columbian and BGH are coming from Surrey. So the models need to change.
The promise to build a new hospital was made in 2005 by the previous government. Never built it. And then the land that was set aside by the government in the 1990s was sold because previous government decided that was a surplus land that they don't need to build a new hospital.
We think that it's okay to send somebody to Vancouver, but in a large city with over 750,000 people, it is not okay. Those patients need to be treated locally so that we have better outcomes. And so we've accepted this norm. We've accepted this lower standard of care. And so this would never fly. Vancouver residents would not be accepting of this. And so that's where I think is the problem, because our community needs to raise its voice.
Certainly, because there's such a unprecedented growth, as we talked about earlier, in this region, more and more services are coming here. We have a brand new state-of-the-art hospital and a cancer center coming in Surrey. That is like the hospital in the most capital investment in hospital than any time in history. That is coming to Surrey.
So adding a new hospital with 168 beds, approximately 7 OR rooms, yes, there is a positive, that's a step in the right direction in the sense of bringing more hospital beds to Surrey. But even if we brought those hospital beds today, we are still 300% deficient in the number of beds that we actually need for the population and the number of patients that we admit to the hospital. So it is a right step, but I don't think it's the right choice. That hospital, if we brought an equivalent to what is being constructed right now in lightning speed, which is St. Paul's Hospital, we essentially need a St. Paul's Hospital with all of those services south of the Fraser. I know that's a hoop dream, and it probably wouldn't even happen during my time here at Surrey Memorial or in healthcare. But that is the absolute necessity here, because we need all of those services to be south of the Fraser, because the population boom is here.
And neither peds or maternity are going to be in the new hospital. That's the concern.
There would be no high-level surgical operations. There would be no neurosurgery, no cardiac surgery. So all of those things, we can't just look at it as a net gain of a hospital. We actually have to dissect it and look at the services that will be provided and how those services are going to improve outcomes, not just access to care. That's been the one big champion that we've been talking about, access to care in Surrey. But we should be looking at how are we going to get the high quality interventions that actually save lives.
If we lose one life, it's too many.
Unfortunately, healthcare is political because our tax money goes to the provincial government, and the provincial government through the Ministry of Finance will send money to the Ministry of Health and allocate funds. Is it a political move for a new hospital? Look, we all know what it actually is, and our residents need to be a little bit more educated on than just say that, oh, we're getting a new hospital. They have to actually dive in and dissect what are we actually getting in the hospital, and that's why we're raising this alarm. That's why we're bringing this to the media and saying, listen, guys, we need to know what's actually going in, what is happening in the walls of the hospital. The most active role should be our youth. It should be our residents of Surrey, because you have the power to actually shift government. the road to the Premier's office does go to Surrey, through Surrey. And they know that, and we know that.
We are doing it, we are building it, and the evidence is before us.
We should be working. Instead of blaming, playing a blaming game, right? We should be able to work constructively with the government that's responsible. So the government listens and we communicate effectively.
In the 10 to 15 year plan, there must be a second tower that is at least a level 2 trauma center. That would then put us, on par with Kelowna and Victoria, but that is absolutely required and necessary. So we do need to increase our inpatient bed capacity. So a second tower here at Surrey Memorial makes the most sense because of interconnectivity. So you don't have to reproduce and recreate administration, which is usually 25% of all healthcare dollars are spent on administration. We underestimate as residents what kind of power we have, because you live in a democracy, you get to vote, and there's by no means is both parties have, or all three parties have made mistakes, but in moving forward, we need a commitment from the government saying that we are going to improve healthcare here in Surrey, because this is the biggest population boom.
And so we're doing a massive hospital build, but then there have to be people who work in the hospital. So we're recognizing the skills and training of internationally trained and experienced healthcare workers. We are opening a new medical school in Surrey, the first new medical school in Western Canada in a generation, training community healthcare workers.
We all have first-hand experience learning in a portable, and even though this provincial government promised to get rid of them, they are still here. The moment a new school is built in Surrey, it is full. And not just full, but full of portables to support student learning.
One of the worst neglects I've seen out of government ever. I am so offended that that government has allowed this to happen in our city.
We inherited about 7,700 students in portables. And since that time, we promised that we want to get rid of them. And current government developed over 11,000 student seats. Not only look after all those 7,700, but plus some. But the growth is so unprecedented that the school board was expecting growth in students by about 1,000 new students. They are now getting about 2,800, 2,900 students. So that is pushing us behind. That's why
they're now talking about having double-stacked portables. They actually do have washrooms in portables in elementary schools. Now, let me tell you, not only is that offensive that kids have to go outside to portable toilets, that isn't even safe, in my opinion.
And we got to make sure that we have enough facilities so our students are able to go into the classrooms and have the resources that they need to be a productive citizens and learn in a very well thought and well planned environment.
In Canada, I don't think there's another school district in BC that is putting up with that, and it is just downright offensive.
Because between 2006 and 2010, the government approved zero capital dollars for Surrey schools and for Surrey School Board. And I think so that left us behind. And
we know that we need about 3.2 billion with B dollars to start building the kind of infrastructure we need in the city. We also know, because the city has had futurists look at where we're going to be in the coming years. We also know that isn't going to stop. That need is not stopping. We need that $3.2 billion today. We're going to need another billion or two in the coming years. So let's get on with it and build schools for our youth, because they are absolutely the future.
I certainly tell you that should be our priority, because if we as a nation have to be successful, we got to make sure that our kids have the early childcare and early learning programs that they need. And then we must have the best schools, secondary schools, where our children get the education, the tools necessary to go into the post-secondary education.
But certainly we have a lot of catching up to do. We're doing it. But but more need to be done.
Diversity has been one of Surrey's strengths since the creation of the city. A different way of looking at things, a way that could lead to a roadmap for success.
That's the gift of Surrey, isn't it?
That's one of the beauty of living in Surrey, and to raise your family and to work here.
I think we have 110 languages spoken in our city, and that diversity is absolutely our gift. It's funny whether it's a Vaisakhi event or Cloverdale Rodeo or another event put on by another culture. We do lots of them here.
When communities from all over the world make Surrey their home, raise their families here, they bring values with them, the hard work, the entrepreneurship, and the skills and knowledge that they bring with them. Then they share those with other communities, as we do it here. And I think that's how you develop a very robust and cohesive society. And I think I see that developing here in Surrey.
Year after year, a Fusion Festival, where we bring in communities together, every year.
Practically speaking, if you go, there are so many banquet halls in this within, I would say, a 4 or 5 kilometer radius. You go on any given day, you see the activities and how active this community is. There is something happening in every one of those halls and other community halls where they're raising funds for really, really good causes, whether they are raising funds for Surrey Hospital, Cancer Society, for Heart and Stroke Foundation, you name it. There is an engaged community. You could see how the sense of giving is there.
And share our festivals. We have the largest Vaisakhi Nagar Kirtan parade anywhere in the world that happens right here in Surrey.
It's important that we all get to see each other as opposed to stovepipe different cultures. It's better that we get to share it.
I think that's what makes Surrey a very, very vibrant and great community to live and raise your children.
You do not need to look any further than the Progressive Intercultural Community Services Society for some of these possible solutions. PICS has been helping immigrants find their footing for decades.
PICS is a non-profit, community-based organization that was set up in 1987 by our founder and founding CEO, Mr. late Charanpal Singh Gill. And the idea was to support all. That time they got together and put together about $80, and from those $80 we have grown to about $23 million now, and about 270 plus staff, and multiple projects helping the clients in multiple languages. So we help youth, seniors, women fleeing domestic violence, and of course newcomers, professional immigrants, anybody and everybody who needs help. We have something to offer to them. I've been with PICS as part of the PICS family for 25 years now. And of these, the last 6.5 years, or close to 7, have been as the chief executive officer. Actually looking after and caring for the farm workers, because they were falling through the cracks. They didn't have any rights. They didn't get the fair wages. They were always kind of ignored. But PICS and its founder, they stepped up and did a lot of advocacy on their behalf to get them fair wages, to bring them under employment standards. Well, currently we are working on building next level of service facility, which is long-term care. We named it Guru Nanak Diversity Village. It's a 125-bed facility, and again will provide culturally sensitive care to our seniors. It's about $118 million project, and we hope to start construction in the next couple of months.
Political and community leaders believe the future is bright in our community. A growing population applies pressure while also meaning the people are in a place to create solutions. Surrey will be the largest city in our province within the next decade, a blessing and a curse.
We need to work together. We need to set aside our differences.
Be proud of the city. I'm very proud that I'm a resident of city of Surrey. We're such nice people. It's a multicultural environment. People from different communities and ethnicities live there.
Surrey's got an incredibly bright future. You know, the challenges that Surrey faces are challenges that other communities would love to have. Growth because people want to be here.
There's a lot of opportunities for young people.
Surrey will be the absolute jewel of Western Canada.
We want to continue to make it better for our children who will come behind us.
We're a pretty bustling city, and we will only get better.